Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt, and you're watching the Provokers Q&A and post-finale wrap-up discussion. This is just sort of a way for us to kind of tie a bow on the box that is the Provokers' first campaign. You know, we were kind of all talking after the finale, and we were all so tired and kind of emotionally and creatively drained after that finale that we all felt like it was worth it to get together again and just kind of talk about the campaign, answer some questions, potentially talk about campaign 2, and just hang out and have a good time and reminisce a little bit about how much fun we've had in this campaign. So we've been kind of compiling some questions and stuff, and I have the live chat open here. So we're going to be answering some pre-submitted questions and also questions live here. So before we get started, I'm going to toss it to these guys so they can introduce themselves, and we're going to go ahead and start on my left, Barker.
Hey everybody, my name is Barker, and tonight I'm playing... Oh, I'm not... Never mind, I'm not playing anybody tonight. He's actually, if you look very carefully, he's right there.
I see him.
In the frame on my wall is Aaron Dice Ellington. But it's been an awesome campaign and a real cool way to close it out with the Q&A. Happy to see so many people here. I mean, this is just a fun just hangout, so hope you guys enjoy yourself and ask questions. And yeah, I'll pass it on to my boy Nate.
Yes, my name is Nate, and I, once upon a time, played Erdon Steroshent, and probably no more. We'll see. He's still alive, I mean, it's possible. But, yeah, I run the channel WASD20. You can find me there on YouTube or WASD20.net. Pass it on to Tim.
So I'm Tim. I'm half of Tabletop Terrors, and I played the character Durgan Bloodmountain in this particular campaign, and I want to play him again. I'm not ready to put him to rest, so hopefully he'll get an opportunity sometime to come back out of retirement. But I just thank everybody for just tuning in and being a part of this awesome campaign.
Awesome, man. And yeah, all of the Provokers did survive, and I'll go ahead and say now that it's not going to be the last time that you see these particular characters. We're planning on switching it up for campaign 2 and doing some new characters, but I'm going to be running some one-on-one sessions with these guys and kind of revisiting these characters and seeing what they got up to in between campaign 1 and 2, because there's going to be quite a bit of a time jump, I think, between campaign 1 and 2. So I'm really excited to do that. All of these guys have agreed already to do it, so I'm holding them to it, and we're going to run some one-on-one games. So I think that'll be really cool, and it'll be the first time that I've run a one-on-one game on Hangouts. So I think that'll be interesting for me. So so I think what we'll do here is we'll start out with some questions in the live chat. And Nate, Tim, Barker, I'll need you guys to help me try and keep up with these. And if you see good questions kind of disappearing up the feed, maybe grab them and copy them into the chat so we can answer them. And we'll take a few from the chat and then run over to Facebook and grab a few pre-written, and we'll just have a good time.
First question is from What You Looking At, and it's, what's it like to make videos when you have faces for podcasts? We do a lot of screen shares. We like to share screen a lot.
Oh my God.
Way to modernize that. That was very good.
I absolutely love that. And that is so true.
Yeah,
you got a face for podcasting.
I got it. My mom always said I had a face for podcasting. So
I don't know, dude. Nate's a good-looking dude. Nate's got the facial hair going on.
Well,
He's got the shaved head, clean look.
He does.
Nate's a good-looking dude.
He is.
He's just.
I've been working on the Matt beard, actually. I haven't shaved it in about 3 weeks, so I showed my wife, excuse me, a picture of Matt, and said, "What do you think?" She said, "Oh yeah."
Oh, okay.
What?
All right.
Uh-oh.
I'm just kidding. That didn't happen.
Dang it.
I'm joking unless you're serious.
But then he did talk to his Matt about it too. He talked to me about it. I am his Matt. So
He's my
So,
my one and
so
only.
make sure that the people in the chat are writing their questions so we look and see questions. But I want to say one thing that Ian from Fantastic Dimensions, who actually ran a really awesome Lamentations of the Flame Princess game for me yesterday, was talking to me today because he was finishing up the Provokers and we were talking about dice and Holly, and he had some predictions about how that would play out. And I got to tell you guys this and tell everyone watching, I was very close after revealing that Dice had a daughter and we were going to Falhast and we were going to collect armies to get to Falhast. I was very close at making Holly Dice's like cat or some shit. Or
It's true.
dear puppy. So I feel like that would have been just as good.
that reminds me of when we did the pipeline game with Alex for Roll Up and Die, Barker, and my character the entire time was looking at this Polaroid photo, and he kept pulling it out at all these different times, and for 2 sessions we never saw what was on the Polaroid, and we assumed that it was his daughter or his wife or whatever, and then in the very last session it was revealed that it was his German Shepherd. It was his dog. He kept a Polaroid of his dog, and that was what he kept looking at on the Polaroid. And so I love that, man. That to me is, that speaks to me as a animal lover and owner of several ridiculous, irritating pets. So
Yeah. Ian's idea was that Holly didn't exist.
see, I had thought about that too. That we get to Falhast, and it turns out that Dice is he's created this this character in his mind and needs to go save her. That would have been crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like in character we would have beat him to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Or at least not to death, but like, oh boy, I'm gonna teach
Dice
you
is-
to be a
Dice is-
schizo.
Dice is talking to a scarecrow in a field, calling it Holly, and just like rubbing its face, and like pulling out little pieces of straw and stuffing it back in, and you're like, "All right, Dice, we're out of here, buddy."
Are there
We're gonna go
asylums
home.
in
Nice
Aeronoth? Or what do they do with crazy people in Aeronoth? I don't know. I don't think they had treatment for the mentally ill in Aeronoth.
No,
So,
I don't think so. At least not that I've
Alien.
figured out yet. So
take you out back with a bow and arrow.
yeah. So we did have a question. Was this another one from? Who was this from? If someone else runs the next Provokers campaign, who would it be? Was another-
That was from Ian. Sorry,
was another
I'm not
Ian
writing
question.
names. That's Ian.
So I would say if someone else was going to run a Provokers campaign, I don't know, maybe one of us, but geez, that's a tough question, man.
I think it's outside of us. You
It would
gotta
have
pick
to be
someone
outside of us,
outside of
yeah.
the Provokers. Who do you think? Who would you have to pick?
I would pick. Oh man, this is putting me on the spot here. I'm gonna say Mike Lasham, just because of that sexy, sexy voice. Like I would love to have him DM an entire campaign. I think that would be great.
I'd be down with that.
And for the next guest player jumping in to play this NPC, it's Mike Lasham's Locrius voice. And today's guest star is Mike Lasham's French mistress voice.
Oh, that's my favorite. I like that one.
Yeah, I think he does a better Locrius than Locrius,
It's-
personally.
He does, man. It's awesome. It's like a little bit more Locrius than Locrius is somehow. I don't know how he does it.
Well, it's like a good Christopher Walken or Kirk, like
Yes.
like William Shatner. You amp it up, and that's what he does. He gets that essence and then drips it on, baby.
Exactly.
Yeah, just
Exactly.
a little bit, just enough to
Right.
yeah.
What happened to the Disruptor's sword? Was another question we got, and I'm gonna let Tim answer that one because he would know better than anybody what happened to the sword.
So, I don't think I know the answer to that, do I? The Griffopter's sword?
Do you remember the Corruptor's butt? Because that's where it is.
Well,
The,
I feel like...
the sword was broken when Durgan threw Storm's Reach at it while he was trying to complete his ritual to open the Bleak. The sword shattered, and that was what triggered all of these visions that the Provokers then had. And I think the last time we saw pieces of it was there was some pieces of it embedded in Storm's Reach, and there was also the hilt and part of the blade that Emery used to stab the Corruptor in the back. And that was all that we saw from it. So it's possible that pieces of it have survived, but we'll have to see.
That's what I was going to ask, because I thought the hilt is what I was really thinking. Like, I don't know where that ended up. There are definitely pieces of it in Storm's Reach, but that was the hilt that the orcs of Skull Ridge went and collected, right? Like, that was the artifact, the thing. So I'm like, that's the important part. I have some cool pieces, but Emery Suresteel's carrying a legendary item.
Yeah, I would say Emery probably took it to try and keep it from falling into the wrong hands, but where he took it, or, you know, any of that, what he did with it, not sure. Let's see here. This is a question for Barker. Where does the name Holly come from?
I can't remember where the actual name Holly comes from, but I pick things like from deep in my subconscious, so there's probably a Holly somewhere there. I also just think it's a really good name, but I like to put Hollies in every game that I run or play in. Like, I try to incorporate, kind of like Sid from Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
There's always a Sid, you know, and
Right.
I just think that's really neat. And, you know, dice over time became kind of a way for me to play out something that I was going through. And still to this day, that's kind of like a thing. It's almost like an homage, I'd say. But the name itself, I don't really know. But yeah, that's it. That's the answer.
Awesome. Here's a question for you guys to answer. What were the inspirations for your characters? Were they based off of other characters you've read about or played before? So I'm going to toss that one to Nate to answer first.
Oh, man. I don't, kind of like with Tim, I know this is true with you too, Tim. This is like Durgan was the first character you really role-played, and that's true for me too. I had kind of tried before Erdan, but I can't say that I have a certain inspiration from a character in a book or movie or anything like that. I liked the idea of a wood elf that was, normally I guess I would think of the wood elves as very nimble and light and proper. And I liked the idea of a wood elf that wasn't. That was a little more rough around the edges, a little more. I mean, maybe an American football player on a European football field, so to speak.
I remember you sending me the picture of Erdan before the game, Nate, and just how like bulky and savage looking he was, and I absolutely loved that. And I loved too that you were playing a ranger type character that wasn't mechanically a ranger. Like, you went straight fighter with it and focused on his ability in combat, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, thanks. And the reason for him being different became because he was, his father was banished, basically, or had to flee. And so he was raised most of his life outside the Shade Veil. So, yeah.
And another thing I want to point out, too, before anyone else answers is, this was planned as a one-shot. It was going to be a one-off game that I was just, grabbing some YouTubers that I enjoyed their content, having them play in the game. And so when these guys created their characters, they weren't thinking this is a character I want to play in a campaign. It was like, I want to just play a character in this one shot. I want it to be kind of a cool character. And so it was interesting for that because you could see the characters kind of developing more over the course of the campaign, which I think is really cool. So What about you, Tim? What was like? Were there any inspirations in particular for Durgan?
So first thing is that I really dropped the ball on that sword question. But I almost listen. I almost BS'd my way through it, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I have no idea.
I saw the fear in your eyes, Tim, and I thought about bailing you out, but I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to let him. Don't help him. Don't help him.
Don't help him. And I, for a split second, I was like, I could BS my way through it, and then I was like, nope, just going to come clean. So first things first. Secondly, as far as the inspiration for Durgan, no, I really didn't know what character I was going to play going in, and the accent was something that I thought, okay, I'm going to try that, and then I decided totally against it. I thought, this is the first time I'm playing in the community, really. I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. And when it was time for me to talk, I just had this nervous kind of shakiness, and I just was like, screw it. And then it sounded like a Chinese robot because of my bad internet anyway. I always played a Paladin in the old Diablo game, like in in the PC. I think it was Diablo 2. My dad and I were on simultaneous save games, and we would like talk about how far we had gotten, and both of us played Paladins in that game. And I don't know, there was just kind of a nostalgia about that, and that's what made me decide to play a Paladin. The rest unfolded in the first scene. I had no idea if he was going to be terse, rough around the edges, and so that was it. Just kind of organic.
Awesome, man. I love that. Barker, what about with dice?
I had never played a Magic user before, and I had played D&D or other role-playing games for like 15 years, and I'd never played a wizard or a sorcerer, but I always really kind of enjoyed the idea of it. And so what I did is I really asked myself, like, so first of all, how would it feel to be a Magic user, like a wizard? And then, even more than that, how would it feel to be a level 1 wizard? Because I'm thinking, level 1, I'm either just realizing I have powers, or I'm just realizing that I can do something with these powers, or I have minimal amount of powers or spells, and I've never been in combat or something. So I really tried to play out the soldier that was never in real combat, in a real combat position, but wanted to do something more, or had the motivation to do something more with his life. And that's what led to me being like, this guy had everything he ever wanted, and then that was all taken away. It was all stripped away from him, so he went out, like just pure blood adventurer. Just went out into the world and tried to figure it out on his own. And I kind of tried to role-play that vulnerable wizard character. And as I went on, I'd realize, hey man, if this were really me, I'd get a little cocky after a while. I'd be, I'd feel like I could do more and more, and maybe that would kind of tilt me in a negative way, in like an Anakin Skywalker way. And so I played with that a little bit, and I don't know, by the end of the campaign, I had just played just the coolest character I'd ever played in my entire life, and it was just a blast.
Yeah, it was honestly like a joy to watch the character of Dice progress and go from being a guy shaving with a rusty dagger in a tavern to a wizard flying around with frostbitten hands and a melted face. It's just like it's in 17 sessions. Like, it's just, yeah, it was really, really cool. So I got to give you props for that, Barker. And it was all very natural. Like, none of it felt forced. Like, it was all like, oh yeah, this feels like this is where the character's going. I could sense it from a couple sessions ahead, and then things like that.
Yeah, this sounds weird, but it was also the first character I'd ever played that I can remember that didn't have an accent. Because sometimes I'll put out an accent and hide behind it, like usually English or British of some variety.
Nice. Yeah.
And I'll hide behind it, and I'll say, well, this person, he would act this way. And so there was a lot of me inside of Dice, and I think that's why it was so easy for me to roleplay, is because I just got to play myself if I were a badass wizard once every month.
So
Yeah.
you got to play yourself as you are in normal life.
Yeah.
So I have a question for Barker about dice. Well, more of a statement that's kind of a question. I kept expecting dice to be a deserter. Do you like it? I thought when we ran into his military unit, and maybe that was evident and I missed it because there were a lot of sessions. But do you consider Dice a deserter, or was he honorably discharged?
No, I always consider Dice to be like, I'm not big on alignment, but I really like how 5th edition has motivation in it, right? So I always like his motivation was I will stand up, like I'm loyal, I will stand up for my cause. And so for a long time the cause was his unit, you know, his group. And then when he left the military for other reasons, which was he met the Provokers immediately after he left, it was just I actually had never even thought of why. It was just more like probably a discharge.
Right.
But that was when, you know, kind of like you're trapped inside of a snow globe trying to find a flake to stand for. And finally, you know, there's the big one, is his daughter's in trouble.
I love it.
One thing I want to point out too, and this is something that Barker and I talked about briefly, was the idea that Dice was conscripted into the military, and not necessarily Dice himself, but people like Dice, people who were capable of minor magic, and we came up with the idea of magicers, which are people who are capable of very minor arcane magic but aren't full-fledged wizards or sorcerers. They can do a cantrip here or there, or half of a cantrip, and the idea was that Talmor conscripted a bunch of these magicers into their army during the War of the Broken North to kind of bolster their ranks, and they would put them in different roles depending on their abilities. And for Dice, whether he volunteered or was conscripted, it was one of these things where it was like he literally could do a little bit of ice magic, and so they put him in the kitchen, you know, and that was like, hey, you're going to be good at like preserving food and stuff like that, so this is your job. Whereas if he was capable of actually doing something offensive, it might be that he was more on the front lines and stuff like that. So
that's super cool. I also love the idea
that was awesome.
You didn't know that about your character, and that's a pretty big pillar, but it's a Chekhov's gun that's hanging on the wall that can be visited. Yeah. So you didn't have to come up with every detail. You still don't know exactly, and the whole campaign's over. And I just think that's a cool point.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you explain Chekhov's gun to the people who are watching? Because that's like my favorite literary thing ever.
Sure. So Chekhov's gun is essentially, if you see a gun hanging on the wall in Act 1, it should be fired in Act 3. So don't put a gun on the wall unless you're going to shoot it, essentially.
Yeah.
And also don't shoot a gun unless you showed it on the wall. So it's kind of an agreement with the reader to manage their expectations and make sure that you also, if you can hang multiple guns on the wall so they don't know which one you're going to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. I love this question. This is from Christy Smith. I believe this is one from Facebook. You guys have all mentioned more than once that this is the best group that you all have ever played with. How long did it take you to realize that this was the group for you? Did you just reflect at the end of the session and thought everyone was awesome, or was there a specific scene or moment from a game that made you think, I'm going to be best buds with these guys and game with them until my arthritic knuckles won't let me roll dice anymore? And I will answer this first and just say that I knew that it was... So I knew that I wanted to do a campaign with them halfway through session 1. Through that first one shot, I knew, I was like, I really hope that these guys are down to play more because this is so fun. Like, I feel a very tangible chemistry, and I feel like we're all like on the same page here with role play and story and how the game should be played and how rules should be used to further the story and further the fun of the game. And as for like a specific moment, I think Battle of Demeter was, I think, the one that was like entrenched. Like, I think this is the best campaign I've ever run, and I think this is the best group of people that I've ever gamed with, because it felt effortless to run that battle, even though they split the party, and it was this massive battle in this ruined city, and we were switching back and forth from Brasswick and Durgan and Erdon and Dice, and there were the Rangers from Stone Rift, and there were giants and ogres, and there was elementals fighting, and it just felt so effortless, and I felt very confident as a dungeon master, and it was because I was just feeding off of these guys. So that was, for me, the Battle of Demeter was like the big one for me. What about you guys?
I think for me, it was just like a little bit more every session, like for the first 3. And I was, so new to the thing that it was just kind of like, oh, sure, someone wants to do a campaign? Like, yeah, I knew that this was awesome, and it was, I played a little bit before, and it was beyond anything I had done before. And I got to give props to Barker, because I think that Barker really set the tone for the role play for all of us, in terms of like, you just set the bar high for really role playing and really just going for it. I know that that was, for me, it was like, oh man, I gotta step up here, and that investment in actually role playing is what kept me around and what made this such an awesome group and great group of friends.
So I knew in probably by the end of session 1, because I talked to my wife Heather right after, and I was like, that was a really awesome session. And according to the end of the session 1, we gained like 9,000 experience points, and we were just like the saviors of the day, and the corruptor crashed into the ground. And I was so sad that it's interesting. I was so sad that the game got cut off, but I was so happy because it meant you had to run another one. So there was no choice in the matter. So I knew in session 2, like, this is my favorite gaming group, and these guys rule. I knew when we met in Washington that these guys were my best friends. Like, that just sealed the deal. When I heard James say yellow leather, that just got me, and I was sold and locked in, rocking and rolling for life.
Yeah, I do have to comment on that. It's just when you guys came and visited last summer, every guy that I met, just the look on their face, they just were so happy to see me, and I was happy to see them. I walked into the bar, and Barker was sitting there with Heather, and Barker just stood up in his full 9-foot height, and the first thing I said to one of my best friends that I was meeting in person for the first time, I said, "You're giant." That was the first words out of my mouth, like an idiot. And Nate,
it was our first date, man. It was our
first date. Exactly. I was a little bit nervous, and then seeing Nate from across the parking lot, because he had to park like 12 miles away and he couldn't find a spot, and I saw his shiny bald head from across the parking lot, and I was like, "Nate, I see you." And Tim, I went and picked Tim up from the airport, and we had just been harassed by someone at the airport, and I met Tim, and I was so excited to be able to tell Tim this funny story in person, and so it was so cool meeting these guys last summer. But anyway.
Was that the story of the
new generation?
It was the new generation guy.
Yeah.
The guy,
Oh, man.
the guy wanted a ride, and I told him that I didn't have room in my car, but that he could get an Uber or taxi or something, and he just like went off on me. And poor Nate's sitting in the passenger seat. I had the window rolled down all the way, and this guy's leaning in the car, and Nate is like, close the window, Matt. And I'm like arguing with this guy. I'm like,
I
hey,
was
man.
laughing.
Are you Uber? Are you Uber?
Are you Uber? Yeah. Yeah, Nate's sitting there cracking up, trying to hold a straight face, and this guy's leaning in the door. Anyway, it was
that just pissed him off even more.
And then I wasn't even in the right place. I wasn't in the right place to pick up Tim, so it was hilarious.
Oh.
But Tim, you haven't answered the question yet. I'm gonna toss it to you, man.
It was kind of funny because I didn't know. I didn't know because I'd never really played a game before. As silly as that sounds, I've always played with very casual gamers. So I just thought that's how everybody gamed. And to echo what Nate said, Barker was emoting and moving his hands, and I thought, oh wait, I can be myself? I'm gonna do that. And so I did. And I was like, oh, yeah, dude, oh, awesome. I'm not weird here. This is normal. And so when the first session was over, I think after you like got disconnected and everything, after the game we were not live, but we were all talking. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we're all like, yeah, we need to do that again. Like, that was so much fun. And then we did. And I would say exactly what you said, Matt. During the Battle of Demeter, I thought, I never want this to stop. If this is how cool this will be forever, I'll do this forever. I absolutely agree with you. So it's a little bit of what Nate said, a little bit of what you said, but being the person who had never played in a campaign before, I didn't even realize what was happening around me. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm hip deep in the coolest thing ever. And it's the first time I've ever role-played, and it's the first campaign I've ever played in. So to me, I consistently consider myself as having won the lotto.
Absolutely, man. I know that feeling. There's a question for me here. To Matt, was there anything that... Oh, I just lost it. Oh, crap. Oh, was there anything...
It's because I posted something right when you were reading it.
I'm like,
You're
the
trying reading
questions
it
are
again.
moving as I'm trying to read them. Was there anything the players did that you weren't... Parker, you asshole. Where is it? Oh, my God. Was there anything that the players did that you weren't expecting at all? Also, what did you think... Oh, what do you think that you did as a DM that you could have done better? I love this question. I think consistently the players surprised me at least a couple times a session, but I would say like the big like whoa moments for me were Erdon killing Una Strongsong. I thought that was such a cool moment and so unexpected for me as a dungeon master. I would say Dice punching his former superior officer was a big one, and Brasswick and Durgan fighting in Stone Rift. So all of my big whoa moments weren't like story character moments. It was all people enacting violence on other people without provocation. That was the big thing for me was people
Without provocation.
Without provocation, exactly. So the Brasswick Durgan fight in Stone Rift when they were trying to distract the people down in the repository was absolutely one of my all-time favorite moments in the Provokers. So, but that question was directed at me. But was there any moments for you guys, like in terms of your fellow players, that just completely caught you off guard?
I think those two that you mentioned, Matt, were pretty huge for me. Like, I didn't surprise myself. So, yeah. So, Barker punching a superior officer was like a that kind of like what? and yeah, the fighting between Durgan and Brasswick was, man, I can't think of any other beyond that. There must have been some, and there were often times when you guys each challenged me. Like, I tend to be someone who can easily sink back and let others take the spotlight, maybe to a fault. And so there were often times when I'd be kind of spacing out, and then someone would just, whoa, I gotta think on my feet here, right? So I appreciated that. It pushed me, it challenged me, and it was really great. It was a lot of fun.
So yeah,
Awesome,
I agree with Nate that you named a couple really good ones, but there are a couple that ring true in my head. First thing, Matt, when we found out that Nosmer was guilty and was executed, right? And that was like a oh my god moment for me, like if I'm watching a movie and like holy crap, like all the puzzle pieces, all the twos and twos come together, like everything. The next thing was when I was sure Dice was gonna die, and I was ready for it. I had messaged Matt in the chat, and I was like, bro, I'm not gonna be mad if Dice dies. And I love killing my characters, dude. Just ask anybody. I love them. But it was when Durgan went to Dice to save his life, knowing full well that he would be dead too if, based on one roll. Like, not only am I about to die, I'm rolling death saving throws and stuff, but his character saved my character's life in the most climactic moment I've ever seen in a tabletop RPG. His life was literally based on the one die roll that dragon had to make, and that was baller, dude. I'll never forget that.
I think that was easily in the top 5 moments of the entire campaign for me, was Durgan taking that attack of opportunity. Just the lead up to it, like, it was dramatic in the story and outside of the story. When Tim was like, I'll take the attack of opportunity, I'll take it. And I rolled it and missed, and it was just, I mean, he had something like 2 hit points left. It was insane. And it was, yeah, that was one of my favorite moments for sure. Tim, did you have any moments that you wanted to add before I go on to the next part of this question here?
I'll be brief. I just feel like all of the characters kept surprising me I think everyone grew as a character very slowly and subtly. So when we were faced with a situation in session 1 or 2, it would ring in session 5 and 6 how the characters would have grown, and they've changed. Like, one of the things especially, I always got a knot in my stomach whenever Dice was in front of a leader, because he started standing up and cracking off at the mouth every time. Like, and at first, he was not great at it and didn't have confidence and was like, well, but he still did it. And then, character-wise, session 6, session 7, he got better at it. These kings, these matrons would listen to him, even though he was a smartass. You know, and I thought, that surprised me. Every time he would stand on a table and give a rousing speech, and then it worked, I'm like, oh my god, he's going to get us killed. And
I gave a rousing
You're a loose
speech.
cannon. Hand in your badge and your gun. You're off the force.
Yeah. I gave a rousing speech session 1, and it was Rianne that verbally punched me in the nuts and said, sit your ass down.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. And then you gave a similar speech later, and it was like, yeah, we need to do something. And I just loved that. So,
for sure.
I had Aragorn going in the background on my TV, like, just riding around with his sword, and then it cut to Theoden, like, ride now. I mean, it was just all the inspiration being jacked into my skull.
And the second part of this question is for me. What do you think that you as a DM could have done better? You know, I think that there's a lot of things that I'm always trying to improve with DMing, but I think the big thing that comes to mind for me is I think there was a certain point in the campaign where I got comfortable, and the sessions didn't start to follow a formula, but it was almost like I caught myself kind of almost knowing what was going to happen. Like, okay, well, I know that this is going to happen, and that I don't like that feeling as a dungeon master. I don't like feeling like I know what's going to happen, because that to me makes me feel like I'm not giving the players enough agency. So there were a couple points in the campaign where I felt like it was getting a little bit samey or safe, and I always want to try different things and push myself and try different narrative techniques, like doing the flashbacks and the visions and stuff. All of that is new for me. That's all very, very new, and partly inspired by Barker and the cool shit that he does with narrative techniques in the Winds of Cerceline. Like, I love that kind of stuff. It's great for storytelling when you use it in the right way. So for me, I guess the simple answer would be I wish I would have taken more chances. Would be the answer to the question. Jarl DM Lloyd asks, will it be the same crew of players for the next campaign? You know, I think that we're all kind of in agreement that we're treating this like any good, solid home group, where it's like people will come and go as they will, but there will always be core players involved in it, and I don't see myself stepping away from it at any point. But I can say that, you know, in campaign 2 and campaign 3, 4, on down the line, you may see people come in and out, return, leave, however it's going to be. It just depends on people's scheduling, what's going on in their lives, and their motivation in order to do it too. So I don't know for sure what Campaign 2 is going to look like right now, but I'll just say that, we never want it to be, we never want to miss out on a chance to game with other people just to keep the core group the same. That's all I'll say about that. I'm actually going to pose this question to you guys in the form of a question. This is something that people ask a lot, and that is, where the hell is the Convocation? This is Reith Rappo asking this. Where is the Convocation? And it looks like Barker wants to answer this. Where do you guys think, or what do you guys think the Convocation was doing while all of this was happening? And Barker, you were raising your hand, buddy. I'm going to let you go to the bathroom, but you're going to need a hall pass.
It's like a slab of wood that was just torn off a tree with like a ribbon on it, and it says hall pass on it in freaking permanent marker. Permanent marker, not permanent. In magic marker. Okay, so.
Purple magic marker, yellow ribbon.
Yes, exactly. Just awful. Not even cool colors. Anyway, so I have this answer copied and pasted, and I know there are other things going on that can be attributed to this answer. So this by far is not the answer. So the Convocation, number one, the last time they intervened, they burned an entire forest down. People don't necessarily like the Convocation, and the Convocation has purposefully withdrawn from intervention in a lot of different cases. So it's easy to be like, well, the Convocation are powerful. Why aren't they here? Well, because they are afraid that they won't be well received. People are afraid of them, and the world is huge. So a small occurrence in a small region of Aeronoth, as at this point, didn't threaten the Convocation's existence. I believe they didn't join in. Similar reason to why the Eagles didn't jump in to help in the War of the Ring in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, and another thing too is, all of that is absolutely correct, Barker, is a couple points I want to add. Even though this campaign took the better part of 2 years, in-game, it has barely been a month. If you remember when the Provokers first interrogated the barbarians in Brook, they said the army's going to get to Falhouse in a month. And so the Provokers were on this timeline, and that's one of the reasons why they were moving so quickly from place to place and having to, spur these people to actions. Like, you don't understand, like, we don't have time to be, dilly-dallying and being diplomatic about this. Like, we need help. So the Convocation is scattered, it's divided, it is withdrawn. Like Barker said, a good percentage of people have left the Convocation because they felt that the burning down of this forest and the actions that the Convocation took during the War of the Broken North were completely, overkill. So all of those things combined to basically mean, even if the Convocation was aware of what was happening in the Western Southlands, they might have been like, let's wait and see what happens here. Like, we're not going to fly down there and intervene in another war after we've just intervened in one 20 years ago. Like, we're just not going to open that can of worms again. So by the time it got to the point where they might intervene, it's already over. But I like the idea that there were Convokers concerned about what was happening and doing side missions here and there. Marquise, Stereotypical Strider, actually ran a one-shot that was about a specialized squad of Convokers that went and dealt with something that the Corruptor was up to, kind of off to the side. And, things like that, that's a good way of thinking about it, is that, hey, maybe they were doing stuff. We don't know what they were up to. We got a very limited scope about what was happening during the War for the Western Southlands. So.
And it's easy to forget that the last time, after they burned down the forest, the Justicar resigned. Like,
yep.
That's huge. To me, anyway. So 14 years ago, the head of a big part of the organization said, you know what? I don't know what we're doing anymore. And it's difficult to recover it's easy to forget that what makes something great is the people involved. And I don't think that kind of a person is easily replaceable. So whatever scattered pieces were left, don't forget that they would have also gotten word, like, who's doing this? One of us? Oh my God, it's Arendelle? Oh my God. It would make it worse for them. So I just feel like a lot of them would just, the scattered few, what would they do? Like, I'm just staying out of this.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know. That's my thought.
No, absolutely. This is a question for Nate, actually. It comes from Sean DeGaiso. He says, being so new to the hobby, what was it like playing... damn it, Barker. What was
shit,
it?
dude, I'm sorry.
No.
I didn't do that on purpose.
You know what, Barker? You are helping me immeasurably by doing this, so I'm not gonna be too upset when you add more questions.
Okay, I'll wait till you're done reading.
What was it like playing from session 1 to session 17 and being live on YouTube? So basically, like, being fairly new to the hobby, what was it like, you know, from session 1 to session 17, playing in front of people and all of that?
It was incredibly nerve-wracking at first, I'm not going to lie. Yep, session 1 was like, what am I doing? You know? So I would say that, yeah, the first few sessions were pretty nerve-wracking. Just trying to keep up and contribute and be a good player and all that stuff. I think that there's a point probably after session 3 or something like that where I just checked in with Matt and I said, all right, Matt, so I'm playing this very kind of stoic character. I feel like he's very cardboard, kind of tough guy, standoffish. Like, what can I do here? You know, I wanna contribute. I wanna be interesting, you know. And Matt gave me some good advice. And one of the things that really stuck with me is think of goals for your character. What are your character's goals? And maybe it's a goal for every session. Maybe it's a goal for every few sessions. But think of a goal. And the other thing that really stuck with me is, you know, you're playing a real tough guy here. What about finding ways for him to let his guard down here and there? How can we sometimes see the sensitive side of this tough guy? So think about ways for that to shine through here and there. So, yeah, that was great advice.
I remember that conversation, Nate. I think we got into a hangout for like 10 or 15 minutes and just chatted about Erdogan, and that was useful for me too because it gave me more of an angle to go with things that were going to happen to Erdogan and things that he was going to have to face. And I think that conversation really solidified for me that, you know, we were going to have Erdogan have to face home again, the place that he left, and family, deal with his family and stuff like that. And so that's something that I would actually encourage players and DMs to do, is talk to each other, check in every once in a while, and just take stock of where are the characters at, what are their goals, are their motivations shifting here or there, what are they interested in doing. That gives you as a DM a lot of direction for where you want to take the campaign, and so you can focus on the characters, and it gives the player a lot of direction as well. So always a good thing. I actually
want to jump in and be like, Nate killed it in session 1, and I know he did because I didn't know this was his first time role-playing until he told me. This was like, it had to be like session 9 or something. Like, it was just unbelievable when he said it. Like, I couldn't believe it. Also, that Battle of Demeter, which is I think probably one of the best sessions in the entire game, was when he was like on the floor and he freaking blinded himself with the thunder tube and he's saying Larawise, Larawise. Like, at that moment, I realized just how round a character Erdogan was, and it didn't disappoint from the beginning to the very end of the campaign. It was just like an awesome plot arc for a single character.
Thanks, man.
Awesome, man. Let's see here.
Every once in a while, I think that someone is laughing at something I said, but then I realized that someone said something really funny in the chat. So.
Yeah.
And our chat.
Ben Fisher said, I missed the beginning a little bit. The statement that they'll be playing new characters, and I don't recall the time lapse between the next campaign and the last. We're thinking around 20 years between campaign 1 and campaign 2, because we have to remember that a lot of these races are long-lived. So 20 years to a dwarf or an elf is, not that long, but it is long enough for things to shift and change. It's long enough where some of the factions and places that we've already seen, the characters that we've already seen, would be a little bit different. And so I don't want to run it, butted up right against campaign 1. I think 20 years is like a pretty good sweet spot where it's like the Provokers are probably still around. They're probably, kicking around somewhere. And their actions have had, it's been long enough where their actions have had time to take effect and change the landscape of Aeronoth. So that's kind of the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and that's actually interesting that you thought about that. That 20 years is nothing for most of, that's like a day and a half for most of the races on Aeronoth.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is another one directed at me. What was your, but we're all going to answer this. What was your favorite moment of the Provokers and why? So I think you guys feel free to jump in if you have one off the top of your head.
My favorite moment was the very end when Durgan killed the Corruptor.
Yeah,
with
that was
Dice's staff, after Eredon had just drilled him full of holes. Like, it was, in my mind, I was thinking, what the elephant in the room is that at the very end of the day, only one person's going to roll that final hit on the Corruptor. And that's which is weird because we all kind of deserve a punch, but it felt like everybody destroyed the Griff-Raptor at the end. And so for me, that was that was the best moment because it came full circle and everybody got a punch in.
Yeah, it felt like a Chrono Trigger triple tech because it was like Eredon sitting there firing arrows into him, and then Dice throws the staff up at Durgan, and Durgan just, it was awesome. I love that. I think my favorite moments, it's kind of a toss-up, but I love, this was a very epic campaign, lots of war, lots of battles, lots of big armies and things like that, lots at stake. So my favorite moments were the quiet moments. Durgan meeting his dad, the vision with Eredon and his mother was legitimately one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever experienced. I came away from that scene, from that vision of Eredon and his mother fletching the arrows with just my heart was hurting. Dice, interacting with Holly at Falhas, things like that. I think those are my favorite moments, the little quiet moments, the little personal sort of touches in between the sort of bombastic battles and things that are happening.
I think for me, my favorite personal moment for my character was probably the one that disturbed me the most, and that was killing Una. When that happened, it was man, I just felt gross. I felt it was heavy. But yeah, I agree that those quiet moments, I think that Durgan with his dad was really cool. I loved that. And the execution of it was Nosmir, right? Yeah, that was another one of those heavy moments. And I think the Battle of Demeter, just the, I mean, we've talked about it before. It's just SWAT style, Dice and Eredon and Brasswick and Durgan just being absolutely flamboyant and swinging their hammers and riding shields. It was epic.
For sure.
I really enjoyed putting the guards to sleep with just a movement of the staff. At that moment, I think that was probably that it was just fun to finally play a badass. I don't think I've had played a badass in a long time, and I felt like one, so that was cool.
Yeah. For me, the moments where, and it's sort of weird and meta, but I cannot deny the emotion that I felt in real life, which is just the moments where we felt like friends in the game. When our characters felt like friends, it was this weird sort of ripple effect. And I can't explain it exactly, but whenever someone would use their turn or their spotlight to do something for each other, I don't know. There were several moments like that. Like, I don't feel like I had a choice with the dragon, you know, and I don't want to make it about just that. There were so many small things where, I don't know, man. It's a weird thing to feel real emotions from something fake like that. But then the argument is it fake? You know, if you feel real emotions from it. So just that camaraderie in the game was probably, and every time that would shine in the different ways, whether it was through jokes, in combat, all those things, just, it was like my favorite thing. It just made me feel so good. So.
Yeah, I can't agree more, man.
Totally.
This question is for you, Tim. I believe this is from Dwayne Wild. I remember reading this on my Facebook page. So this is about risking Durgan's life to save dice. He says, my question is this. Tell me about the love for your friend that inspired you to risk death for another moment with him, and the chance that you'd both be spared from death.
So in the moment, it's not that quantifiable. So statistically, I didn't have enough time in my head to catalog or categorize and, you know, weigh the pros and the cons, but it was just the thing that I had to do. I don't know how to explain it. And that's sort of a cop-out answer, but, you know, I guess you don't know if you're going to step in front of a bullet for somebody until someone shoots. You know, and everyone uses that phrase like, man, I would take a bullet for you, but would you? And in that instance, I had a split second to think about it, but it was weird because I wasn't thinking, well, I have 6 hit points here, let me see if I can use my luck roll. It was like, you know, when Barker said that he was ready to die, I thought, yep, Durgan's ready to die too, for that reason. And there was so much weight behind what we were doing as a group, as the Provokers at that point, was so much bigger than all of us. It involved every one of our kingdoms and this whole realm. And to me, I didn't think of this in the moment, but looking back on it, dice represented hope. Dice represented the success of us getting to Falhast. And I didn't really think about that, but subconsciously, keeping dice alive was keeping the Provokers alive, was keeping our hope alive. So that got kind of deep and gooey there, but I think that's my answer.
No, that's great, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, I like the gooey.
This is a question from Ian, Fantastic Dimensions. He says, for each of you, who was your favorite character, PC or NPC, in the campaign? I'm going to let you guys answer this first. Barker, why don't you go?
Oh, shoot. Okay, cool. So I'm a big fan of Anakin Skywalker-like characters, so I have to say Arendelle. But I really like the troll. That was just awesome. I think the quote... oh, my God, what is that quote that should be put on a T-shirt? It's...
But you already ate the jerky.
It was
a balance must be struck, and I already ate the jerky.
A balance must be struck, and I already ate the jerky.
Yeah.
Is the quote of the campaign.
Yeah, I was going to say, just say it, man. It's the quote of the campaign. That's the one.
Yeah, that's it. But I have to say that probably I would say my favorite NPC would be Holly, because she really allowed me to finish some stuff up, you know, on this end of things. So it was a really cool way to play stuff out. But man, it's hard to answer, man. A lot of them. I'll throw it to Tim.
I was gonna say you're gonna make me go, huh, Nate? I think we're both playing chicken there with the mute button.
Yeah, it was a standoff.
Like, no, you go. I'm still thinking. You're 17 sessions. I'm thinking. And that's what's tricky about all this, man. There's 17 sessions. If I watched a session, the NPC in that session would be my favorite. You know, this is an off the wall one, but the one that pops into my head, I don't even remember his name, one of my favorite NPCs was the guy that had the lightning damage in the curtain, because it felt real. Like, he was not a plot device. You made me roleplay that out, and it wasn't easy. Like, you didn't let me just go, well, let me do a persuasion. You made me talk through it, and I was expecting to skate by. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll do a little roleplay, roll the dice. All right, tell me what I know. And you were like, nope. You got to convince this crazy person to trust you. So he stood out in my mind because he felt like a real character, and that interaction was kind of memorable for me as a player. So I got to give it to old crazy lightning face.
Your crazy lightning face.
Old lightning
Down
jaw.
at the curtain. You're drinking too much.
Down the curtain.
We call him Bolt Face.
Call him Bolt Face because he looks like Frankenstein and also was hit in the face with a bolt of lightning.
I believe his name was Thunderstruck after the AC/DC song. That was his nickname, was Thunderstruck. Yeah. I totally forgot about him, Tim. I'm glad you brought him up. All right, Nate. What about you, man? Oh, he's muted. He can't talk.
You're in the hot seat.
Oh.
You're in the hot seat.
He's
trying,
like, oh,
but
sorry. He can't. Sorry, guys. I can't.
What is he joking? He can't unmute himself? Hey, but Nate, blink twice if you're afraid to unmute yourself. Oh, God.
Dude straight up left.
No.
He is Googling.
Yeah.
No, he's on the Aronoff wiki right now, the cheater.
He's like,
Luna Strong song. No, I killed her.
I killed her. I can't say that. So while Nate comes back on, I will say my favorite NPCs in the campaign were Keenra and Mere Stonegaze, just because I love slimy kind of just sniveling sort of characters, and I loved Mere because he was almost like if Grima Wormtongue was a neutral good character. Because he's like, listen, man, I'm the advisor to the queen. I'm a sniveling son of a bitch, but I'm doing everything I'm doing for good. Like, I'm trying to be a good guy. Like, this is the dude who outed Eredon's father as a traitor and then took his job, not because he was ambitious, but because he was like, listen, I don't want a guy in charge who's going to be off talking to trolls and shit. Like, I need to be in charge now. And his stone eye, the idea that he could just kind of probe your mind a little bit, not read your thoughts, but just get a feel for you, very insightful, and he was able to sort of draw people out a little bit with that stone eye. I really liked Mir for that. And Keenra is just fun. He's got a fun voice, and he's always like trying to screw people over, and he's got cool artifacts, and he's the only Dragonborn in the campaign. He's the only Dragonborn that's shown up in Aeronoth at all, so he's kind of a cool, unique sort of character. So I like Keenra, and I like the Troll too. The Troll's fun to play. So, all right, Nate, now you're in the hot seat, buddy. You got to talk.
Yeah, my Hangout just froze. I was like clicking on that mute button, like, come on. Nope, it's staying red. So anyway, okay, so you said Mere Stonegaze, and that was definitely going to be one of mine. Just thought, so cool, the idea of the stone eye, and that, yeah, like you said. Anyway, great character. I also really liked Emery, like, just really cool, and maybe you said that before I came in, but I didn't hear it, so I'm exempt. Okay, good. Yeah, I liked Emery. Just, this kind of retired convoker who, is reluctant. He's damaged goods. He's only got one arm, and he jumps back in the fray with us. How awesome is that? That was just really cool.
Yeah, he was a character that I think I was most excited to introduce into the campaign, just because I've talked about this before, but he was kind of like a linchpin, like keystone element of the campaign. Like, there was something missing in the second half of the campaign, and I realized that I needed an Obi-Wan. I needed someone who knew the Corruptor before he was the Corruptor, like, intimately. Like, this guy was my friend. He was my brother. Like, we served together, we fought together, and then he lopped my arm off and left me for dead and killed my Griffin. Like, and I was really excited about that, and it was one of those things where I got to kind of foreshadow it early on, and then when he finally showed up, it was just so satisfying to be like, and this fisherman has one arm, and everyone goes, like, oh my god, it's the guy we've been waiting for. Like, that was just really cool for me. Okay. I can never pronounce this guy's name. Dickly Quill. Dickly Quill. Asks,
how can you not pronounce it? That's Dickly Quill, man. That's old Dickly Quill.
Old Dickly Quill.
Old Dickly Quill.
He used to come over and have dinner at my parents' house every Sunday.
Oh, man, I play cards with old Dickly.
He asked, what happened to Invarieth? And Invarieth was the black dragon that melted dice and almost killed Durgan and Eredon.
Yeah.
He kind of flew off and probably went into hibernation, licking his wounds. Dragons are godlike creatures, and to be injured like he was during the battle, he's a pretty young dragon. He would just kind of go lay down and take a nap. He had little interest in continuing to be involved in that battle or the war. He had sort of done what he was asked to do, had his fun, and then, just kind of split. There's double Nates. Double Nates! Oh my god. I knew it. I knew there were two of you. I knew you were doing that thing where you pretend to be one person, but you're two people.
Yeah, my Shockwave player is just like crashing, so I'm gonna try. We'll see what happens.
So yeah, Invarieth is still around. He's still alive, and he will undoubtedly show up in campaign 2.
And I love that, Matt. I love that that's what you did with it, because I think the easy, I wouldn't say lazy, but the non-thinking game master would say, all right, well, we got to fight the dragon again. And I love that he didn't show up because of exactly what you said. He's like, yeah, I don't have enough stake in this to almost die again. I'm going to go hibernate for a few hundred years until all you mortals are dead.
Yep.
I'm going to come back out and do my thing.
Exactly.
It's a like you said, he's a godlike creature, and to me, that's the long game.
Yeah.
Mentality.
That's I sort of take an almost Lovecraftian sort of take on dragons, where it's just complete like nihilism, where it's like humanity does not matter, mortals do not matter. It's like you are bugs beneath my feet. Like if I cared any less about what was going on out here, like I would never come out of my cave. Like I only come out for entertainment and to like have a little bit of fun and get some food and stuff. So that to me is like, yeah, he just didn't have enough stake, like you said, Tim.
Dragons are 30-year-old men that live with their parents.
That is exactly right.
Yeah.
Who can breathe fire.
Yes.
This one is directed at Barker. Sorry if this was answered before. Is there more Sir Celine coming up soon?
Oh, shit. Yeah, actually, on the 24th of this month, just over 2 weeks from today, at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, that's 9 p.m. Eastern, we continue the Winds of Sir Celine game with a session that I think is going to be entitled Hallow Hall. So that's going to be a fun session. Yeah, we're going to keep it going. There's been a lot happening. I finished school, so that's been interrupting a lot of things. Late June, early July, we're going to be going to Washington. We, as in me and James and Cassie and Heather, and we're going to hang out with Matt a little bit and call Tim all weepy-eyed while watching Predator, saying, "Got you pushing too many pencils," and shit like that. And we're just gonna cry and miss him. But yeah, there's been a lot going on. But yes, Sir Celine. So the 24th, mark your calendars if you want to watch.
I'm so excited. And I'm also gonna put a little plug out there for another game that we're gonna be playing in, and that is a game set in Dragon Grin that Tim is gonna be running for myself, Barker, Nate, James, and Cassie. We're all going to be playing in Dragon Grin, and that's going to be not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after. I believe that's the 18th.
That
we're
is
going to be
correct.
playing in that game. Yeah.
It's 18th.
Yes.
It is going to be a campaign that's sporadic. Like a hey, when we have a break in the Provokers and Cerceline, but I'm excited.
Bro.
No?
Every day. You play every day.
All day.
Dude,
I play every day.
You can't do that to me. Here, let me just say this really quick. If you're listening, if you're watching this right now, you want to tune in for that session on the 18th, because I'm not going to say anything other than based on what we know about how it's going to begin and what the session, what our characters are going to be doing. It is just the most intense thing I can think of in my head. So you definitely want to see it, and you cannot be like, well, we're just going to play whenever. No, we're going to make sure we play once a month. I'm going to hold Tim to that. You're going to hold me to holding Tim to that, and we're going to get playing because I'm really excited.
I'm in. I'm in as often as you guys want to play, man. I'll
That's
run
right,
a game
man.
as often as you guys want to play it.
This is another one that's directed at Barker a little bit. But I can talk to it as well. What was Dice's epilogue going to be if he hadn't gone off on his own?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so first off, Matt had approached us and been like, hey, what do you think you're going to do for your final epilogue, like your goodbye scene or your, whatever you're going to do, because he gave us each kind of like a soliloquy to kind of sort of talk about what we were doing. And we decided that, so there's an organization in Matt's world. What are they called?
It's called the Concilium Aeternum, and it's more like an Illuminati type thing, where it's like a bunch of crazy people think that this organization is responsible for a bunch of shit that's happening in the world, but most people sort of pass it off as a bullshit. So.
Well, and I don't know how much you want to give away or how much you want to put in the next campaign or whatever, but the idea was that perhaps they've been watching Dice and his darker tendencies, and we're hoping to kind of recruit him. But a lot of the vision that Dice was shown inside the troll tea, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of that vision was going to play out. So he was always going to kind of leave. That was kind of the plan. But at the last minute during the fight with the Corruptor, I was like, dude, I'm sorry, I got to run with this thing. It just popped into my brain, and it's controlling my life. And I had him join the Copper Jackals instead.
And I actually love that, because I was totally cool with the direction that we were going with for Dice, and that was kind of a darker, more isolated kind of feeling ending. But I think that you were feeling this other ending, Barker, and I think I went along with it totally willingly, is the idea that Dice wasn't wandering out into the wasteland by himself. He was going out there with a purpose. He said, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go back to Talmor, and I'm going to cross this desert and see what the rest of this world has in store for me. And it was more hopeful than I anticipated. I kind of anticipated it being a little bit more cynical, a little bit, that ending, which is totally fine. But having it switched up at the very end, that was huge for me, man. And I loved where you took it. So
that was good, because I was worried.
Yeah, no, you never have to be worried about that kind of stuff.
I didn't know it was going to happen either. And the Copper Jackals are in Dragongrin, and I was just as surprised as Matt, which was a really cool feeling. I was like, fanboy!
Well, and I do want to say that Tim and I have already talked about what the implications are for Barker's epilogue. And I think we're going to see some of those implications in the one-on-one session that Barker is going to be in with Dice. So
you gonna die.
You gonna die.
Yeah, you gonna die.
This is a question from Power Up Gamers, role-playing for accessibility. So that's Jaren D&D. And he asks... Oh, I lost it again. Oh, my God. Where is it? There it is.
Dude, I can't stop doing that. I'm so sorry.
It's fine, dude. My question for the Provokers is, if someone is to run another Provoker campaign, who would you like to see play as characters in that campaign? So basically he's asking, like, which players would you like to see in an Aeronoth campaign? A non-
What we should do we should narrow it down and say who would we want to pick to play our characters.
Okay. I'm
Because
down
I
with
feel
that.
like anybody should do an Aeronoth campaign because that's dope, and you can get all the Aeronoth stuff at AbsoluteTabletop.com. But who
Right.
would play Durgan and Eredon?
I like this idea. So I've already said that the DM would be Mike Lasham. I would want to see Mike Lasham run a Provokers game. So, but the rest of you need to put out some names.
Well, Mike was going to be Erdon. He already agreed to that. So
Oh, dang it. So the Mike is just going to play everybody? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, he's got all the accents down.
I was gonna say, yeah. Oh, that's flipping hard.
I got one.
Go.
I will go with Lloyd playing Erdon.
Oh,
Dang it, I was gonna say
I was
Lloyd
gonna
for
pick
Durgan.
Lloyd.
Lloyd plays
I
a
was
good
gonna
tough
pick Lloyd
guy.
for dice.
I mean, so
What the heck?
there you go. The Jarl DM.
Oh shit.
Okay, so I don't know who else can do a Scottish accent. I guess that doesn't matter.
Chad Nick does a mean one.
So maybe I would pick Chad for Durgan.
Don't limit it to someone. Well, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
feeling my way through this, Nate. I've never been asked.
Yeah. Well,
Look at this. I
it's
have
the
a
first
Tim's
time
like-
for everything.
Look at this. I have a
Dude,
tiny
that's-
firearm.
You know what, Tim? I know exactly what that is.
Yes, you
That's
do.
Thatch the Stampede's gun. I
I
have that action figure. I
was
made a
thinking McCree.
double dollars joke the other day on Overwatch, and I don't think you were on, Tim.
Oh,
when
I wasn't on. I would have loved that.
All right. So,
Oh, I didn't answer. I guess.
who are you
Chad.
picking, Tim? To quit pulling out tiny firearms here.
I picked Barker. No,
I pick Parker.
I picked Barker. Man, I don't know, man. I would say I would pick Chad.
I think Chad would be an awesome Durgan for sure.
Yeah, because I think he
Yep.
can capture
and-
the energy too.
Yes, for sure.
Durgan's loud. You know, I think Chad has that energy when he does voice acting. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. That's absolutely right.
And Nate already called Lloyd.
Yeah.
for that.
So I got to pick Locrius, which is the best third pick in any draft I've played in. Like, I can't believe he fell to 3. But actually, I would call my old friend Alan Tudyk to play dice, to just jump in here. And
I call my buddy Trey Cool.
Trey Cool.
All right. No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, sure, that was good.
Okay. Mike Lasham has a question. I'm going to toss this over to Tim first. Where did you get your inspiration? Oh,
That was Tim. That
that was
wasn't me.
Tim this time.
No, you.
Damn it. My question. Wait, I just read that one. Mike Lasham. Where did you get your inspiration from for some of your more prominent NPCs? Oh, wait, that's for me. I'll just talk about a couple really quick. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the Corruptor, Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader, Arthas from Warcraft. Those are the two big, like, fallen hero archetype guys that sort of went into the Corruptor. Emery obviously is like an Obi-Wan Kenobi type character. What else? I kind of already talked about this, but Mir Stonegaze is like a Grima Wormtongue with good intentions. I can't really think of anything else. Yeah, I don't know, man. The thing is that I'm constantly inspired by stuff, and I constantly am absorbing things, but I don't necessarily actively, like, knowingly put that inspiration into use. Like, I'm like, this character is inspired by this, but it is very well, like, a bunch of different stuff that I've just absorbed. So any movies or books that I read just instantly gets logged away for later use. Ooh, this is a great question. Tim, you're a son of a bitch. It was a great question. until it disappeared 12 miles into the atmosphere. Okay, this is a great question. For those provokers that are also DMing games, how has this campaign most challenged or improved your abilities to run a session? I really like that. I'm gonna throw it to you guys, obviously.
Read the question one more time, because I'm looking for it.
So I'm afraid to. I'm afraid someone's gonna put something in the chat and it's gonna go right up into the sky. For those provokers that are also DMing, how has this campaign most challenged or improved your abilities to run a session? So basically, how has playing in this game affected your DMing?
Nate, do you want to go first?
No, I don't, Barker.
I don't. I think you misunderstood that it was rhetorical. No.
I think you misunderstood my social cue.
Yes, I do.
I love that moment. That's my new favorite Provokers moment right there.
Right there.
I'm just being an ass. So, okay, I'll go first. I think that, I think, like, expecting more of players has been a big thing that, like I said, like, this was the first time I really role-played, the first, it was just amazing. I mean, maybe I'm biased here, but I thought it was an amazing campaign. I thought you guys were awesome players. Matt, you're an awesome DM. And so I think expecting more of players was a big thing. And the other thing, I think, is a little bit of what you said earlier, Matt, about having courage. Like, I got that from you, that you didn't necessarily want to know what's going to happen. I got the feeling that that's the way you like to DM. I'd never heard you say that before, but I think that that's something that was really hard for me at first, having the courage. Like I was scared of players messing up my story. And, I'd only DM'd, 3 times ever before playing with you guys. So, I was brand new to it. But, yeah, having the courage just to say, go with it, guys, and I'll adjust.
Awesome, man. All right, what about you other two guys?
You other two guys. I started Winds of Cersaline shortly after Provoker started, but it was a ways when Tim did a call out for GMs to run a game for him, and James and Cassie, I think Cassie was involved anyway, and then Matt jumped on, so it was like that. It made me want to run games. Playing in this is like, oh man, I want to run a game for these guys, for like people in this group of friends, and so the benefit was it made me excited to run a game and build my own world. The challenge is that the Provokers is really good, and people, albeit not as many people, but people wanted to watch the Winds of Cersaline too, like people other than the players, and so I was really nervous, like, oh my gosh, because I knew, like, in my opinion, I couldn't get it as good as the Provokers, because the Provokers to me is just like essential D&D. Like, it's just really awesome D&D. And so the challenge was living up to it. And I have a huge amount of flaws in DMing, and the big one is, and Matt doesn't do any of my flaws. I do this thing where I try to put little nuances everywhere, and I make everything super complicated, and Matt's really good at keeping things simple, but still giving it nuance. And so I think that's how the Provokers has helped me run games, is it's just watching and participating has inspired me to be this, to narrow down my plot lines and to simplify things without oversimplifying them. So that's the biggest thing that I've really been able to improve over time.
and this is directed at what you're looking at, the comment about Durgan riding on Peter Griffin's back. Family Guy cutaway. Hey, Lois, there's a Durgan on my back. And Durgan's there just for a second, and then we cut. So, essentially what Barker said about the complicating, I feel like I wasn't raised right in D&D. I didn't understand that it should fit in a certain time frame, and when I would play, even with casual gamers, I just didn't understand that it was I would always make my sessions 8 hours like the one shot in Seattle. Because I didn't know where to begin and I didn't know where to end, so I just tried to cram so much in at once. And the thing that I learned from Matt was you just have a couple of key pieces and let those breathe. That's the session. So I learned that I overstuffed my sessions. I also learned that I would try to start where I wanted to end up, and that's not great storytelling. And it's weird. I'm a pretty good writer when it comes to structure and kind of coming up with a story that would read. Like, if I wrote a 2,000-word story, it would have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But when I would try to run a game, it would just have a middle. And so I learned from Matt that don't start with the Griffruptor on the pyramid. Start with a tavern, and don't be afraid of that, and let these things grow. And don't try to come up with the next cool thing. When we fought an owlbear, I had never fought an owlbear. And as a game master, I'm always tempted to say, no, owlbears are too mundane. You know, I want a two-headed, incredible Hulk monster. And a lot of your players probably haven't experienced those tropes. So Matt made it fun to experience dangerous things that are legendary in D&D, but he wasn't trying to do the next big, crazy thing. He wasn't always trying to one-up it. It was, hey, here's another challenge. And I think that if I had to take away, it's over-complexity. Like, I just needed to scale my stuff, like Barker said. Start small and let things grow naturally. And then have goals within the session of what you want to achieve. And I'm a totally different game master after playing. I was like, oh, okay, I just went to school. So.
And well, I appreciate all the kind words you guys said, and I just want to say that, like, I think that we have all learned and grown together as players and as game masters in doing this campaign, and just interacting with each other in general and working on different creative projects together and stuff like that. So it's definitely like it's a symbiotic relationship. Like, sometimes, like, we take turns on who's the big on who's the shark and who's the little fish that swims next to it waiting for little chunks to come off of it. Like, we swap places all the time. This is a great question. I love this. This is another one from Ian, Fantastic Dimensions. He's asking the good questions. I'm pretty sure that he's asleep face down on his keyboard right now, but this is a question from him. Spin-off campaign or mini-series based on one NPC or faction from the campaign, who would you choose? Basically, if you were going to play in or run a side campaign, what would you want it to focus on? And I'll go ahead and I'll start with Nate on this one, unless he tells me no.
So is this like would this be my homebrew world, or is he talking about in Aeronaut or Provokers related?
I think Provokers related.
Like if you could pick one NPC from the Provokers campaign, or one faction, or one area to make a side campaign or one shot or whatever mini series on, what person or faction would it be?
Because it's a Provokers Q&A, so.
Yeah. Man, that's a really good question. And someone better make this happen too. Okay. No. Jeez. Hmm. I would want to see more in Shadevale. I think the Orcs of Skull Ridge was awesome, but give me a Watchers of Shadevale campaign or one shot. Give me the other side now. I want to see how the Watchers are in action. Erdogan was one, but I'd love to see how someone else's take on it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. That would be really, really cool.
And
What
get
about
a
you,
young
Marvin?
matron Elmira in there.
Yeah, man. Do like a prequel, The Watchers of Shadevale, The Rise and Fall of Theris Saroshint. have
Yes.
have young Mir Stonegaze in there. Have the trial of Theris. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be really cool. All right, Barker. What about you, man?
Okay, so someone in the chat, what you looking at, said it would be cool to have Rhiannon Roar's offshoot and I thought like, oh, that'd be cool to have like every campaign be episodic, kind of like Star Trek Next Generation, but it's all based around new adventuring groups that are coming into the Wayward Wanderer, So like there's always a mission ready to go and handle it. Like I think that would be really cool, and I didn't even think about that. I really think it would be, and this might be a little too big, and it might be a little too obvious, but I think having a Convocation miniseries about almost like a Torchwood, but it's the Convocation, would just be super dope. I'd be big into that. That'd be awesome.
So on the heels of the what you're looking at, Rhiannon Roarge, I would want it to be. I'm riffing right now. I would almost want it to be like humorous and lighthearted, like they're dealing with stuff near and around the Wayward Wanderer, like you're saying. Like I almost imagine it being in the same vein. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the anime Toriko or any of those where it's just larger than life, bright colors, just I don't know. But my real answer is I would love to see the Rift Rangers from Stone Rift, and I would do something a little different. It would be a sort of supernatural campaign. I would love a special team of Rift Rangers that were put together to deal with some sort of supernatural threat, and it's like they picked a few that were specific to certain tasks and then sent them out, and just kind of do that. I don't know. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome, dude.
Yeah. I've thought about this for a while, but I'd love to run like a Grey Wings one shot or even a mini campaign. And the Grey Wings are basically like rebel convokers that have sort of like shunned like the higher ups of the Convocation, but they still have their griffins and they still have all of their abilities, and they're sort of like vigilante griffin riders. I think it'd be really cool to do like a ragtag squad of like Grey Wings who are like seeing to these like local problems, and every time they show up, people are like Convokers, and it's almost like the Witcher series where when a Witcher shows up, everyone's afraid of them, even though they know that the Witcher is just there to kill a monster and like help them, but they're just like scared of them. So it's like the Convocation shows up to help people, but everyone's terrified of them because of what happened in the War of the Broken North. I think that'd be really cool to like play with that kind of idea a little bit.
It's like if a motorcycle gang rolled up into town.
Yeah.
It's like, oh crap.
And they're like, hey man,
Angels.
we're here to help, and then you're like, I don't believe you.
Yeah. All their griffins are parked outside of the bar.
Yeah, exactly. And Pee-wee bumps into them on the way out, and they all fall over.
Standing still, just.
Yeah. Did you know you're in the private club of the Satan's Helpers? All right.
So good. So good.
So Lloyd ducked out of the chat, but this is another Lloyd question from Jarl DM here. Would the next campaign have the same kind of scope in terms of level and threat to the world, or bigger, smaller? I would say smaller. I think that Campaign 2 is going to be more focused, less grand, sweeping armies, diplomacy stuff, and more personal. But still, I still want to have those epic elements. I still want to have the big battles and the high stakes and things like that. But in terms of like the scope of it, I think I want it to be a little bit tighter, a little bit more focused on the characters and individual endeavors and adventures and things like that. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that at all about what you're thinking for the second campaign or what you'd like to see, but I mean it's a good opportunity to talk about it.
I think that sounds awesome, Matt. I think switching it up a little bit, making it a little smaller, but still having those. I mean, you can have really powerful moments within, a story on a smaller scale. They can still be these epic, powerful moments. So
I find it really difficult to do that because my brain automatically does this thing that I think is a good thing for the most part, where, if there are bandits raiding a road, why are they doing that? Oh, because they're hired by this person. Oh, that person's more powerful. That person's trying to control these people, and it's like it just grows, and it always turns into kind of an epic storyline, which is really cool for someone who's running a campaign number 1 for a group. But by the time the 4th campaign comes, everyone's like, bro, we know how this is going to turn out. Like, we get it. So it's I'm interested if you keep it smaller. I think I would be able to learn a lot from that.
Yeah, and the example I like to use is look at the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, and then look at Daredevil on Netflix. The Avengers probably aren't going to be rolling up to Hell's Kitchen anytime soon. But the show Daredevil, especially like the second season, is so dense with the conflicts that are tearing apart this tiny little area. And they managed to make the stakes for that scope as big as an Ultron is for the Avengers. And so I always think of it that way. I'm like, the Provokers are like the Avengers running around handling world threats, but where's your Hell's Kitchen? Who's your Kingpin? Who's trying to get this little town? And sometimes it only goes as high as a Kingpin who was born and raised there and has vested interest there and wants to control it. He's not looking to control the world. He's not looking to end the world. He wants to make his hometown what it used to be, or just the region, and that's how I try to think of it. And I'm like, that's how I kind of see this next campaign, though I know nothing about it. This is more like the Hell's Kitchen and the Daredevil versus the Avengers that the Provokers was.
I think that's a really good way of thinking about those things, because Daredevil is still epic. Like it's an epic show. There's lots at stake, and there's crazy combat and lots of cool characters and stuff like that. But it's a tighter, more personal story than you would get in, say, an Avengers movie. So I think that's a really good way of looking at it, and honestly, good for me going forward when I'm thinking about this campaign. It's like that's what I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at that difference between those two. Nate's eating Cheetos, watching Demolition Man in the hammock. All right, here's some more questions. Ben Fisher. 20 years later, how do you think Stone Rift has remembered its wandering king? Tim, I think that's a Tim question. I'm going to toss it over to him. How do you think Stone Rift will remember its wandering king?
So I'll answer it with a question. How do we remember the president from 20 years ago? Do you? Could you even tell me who was in office? I think for me, the theme of this campaign, this upcoming campaign, is that time passes and people forget heroes. They don't necessarily forget what they've done, but to me, I'm sort of thinking of it as the Provokers were like the guys that, were victorious in World War II. And they're not necessarily, like Matt mentioned, they're still around, they're still doing things, but that was their era, that was their season, that was their time. So I think Durgan would be doing something much more low-key. He would probably be living out his life. I think that he had a huge change, a big shift, and his faith became tangible. And so I think he would probably devote himself to pursuing his faith and also evangelizing others, not necessarily as a zealot, but finding the other Durgans who need Tritherion before they end up with their teeth smashed out and their face in a pile of their friend's blood. You know, and if he can find those and help them, that's what he's probably doing. Probably not getting into a lot of trouble. So I think that's kind of my answer on that one.
I like that. That's a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I like that too, man.
So here's a question from, I'm going to butcher this name, I think it's Andre Geralt. This is a question for you, Barker. Barker, do you have any RP tips for shy folks?
I think we should all take a stab at this. Any role-playing tips for people who are shy? Man, that's really hard because, you know, I'm not shy, but I have bad anxiety, social anxiety. So it's kind of like an oxymoron. So, but there's no advice that I can tell you that'll just make it like, okay, perfect, I'll just do that, and then all the shyness will go away. You should know 100% before every single role-playing session, and especially before every single game I run, I get the jitters like crazy. I get nervous, I start freaking out, and it's usually, that's why I do like the previously on this campaign moments, like where I read something for a minute. It's usually not until I'm halfway through with that I feel good about the game. So every game I run or play and I get the jitters. But I think that playing with people you're comfortable with is important, and realizing that it's okay to be the weird person here. Like, we're all weird people. This isn't like the high school cafeteria table where we kind of have to talk silently because the popular kids will see us, or maybe like there's that one person who's like, I'm too cool for this. No, we are all playing in an online forum here, so we all know that it's okay to act a little weird, to put on an accent, to role play something funny or goofy or serious. Like, also, you might try playing a shy character. Like, have your character, describe your character as purposely concealing their face. I'm sorry, I'm just very shy. Saying things like that, and describe your character in the third person, maybe. So, I hope those things help, but I'm not. That's one of those things where I don't think there's a hard, concrete answer that can change someone's RPG life for the better.
Yeah, that's great, man. I don't think I have anything to add to that. That's really good advice.
I'll say one thing, because I know someone personally who they told me, yeah, playing RPGs helped me get over my shyness. And I asked them, I was like, how? And they basically said, well, if you think about it, you're practicing social interactions in a safe environment. So I was like, oh, that's a really good point. You're pretending not to be shy, and by sometimes going through those mechanics, you find out you find a little more confidence, and you're able to talk a little better on your feet and things like that. So I do love the idea of playing a shy character. I had never thought of that, Barker. Conversely, if you want to try to role play someone who isn't as shy, you'll have to think like a person who isn't shy, and in front of people who you trust, you can literally practice not being shy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, role-playing has done wonders for me in terms of just social interaction and working with people, and even just like looking people in the eye and talking to them. It's like D&D. I owe a lot of that to D&D. So.
Ben Fisher actually just said something in the chat that I do, but I don't realize I do it. When I'm starting to feel nervous or shy or something, especially in this forum, I turn my camera off. I actually like to GM, at least when I'm starting, with the camera off. Maybe later on I'll get more comfortable and I'll turn it on, but that is 100% anxiety. Like, I will turn my camera off and all of a sudden it's like there's a barrier and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yep.
Let's see. This is a question from Reith Rappo. Will the worlds of Aeronoth and Sir Celine ever cross again? And I'm sure like Barker and Tim can talk to this too, because they they have their worlds as well. But I will say that I don't think we really have any plans of ever having any tangible crossover in the worlds, just because they are our worlds and we'd like to keep them separate. And aside from the occasional, like, you know, nod towards another campaign setting, I think, you know, they're divided by magical storms for a reason. But yeah, that's just me. That's just me. So I'll let you guys talk to it, though.
I will say that Quintrek from the Winds of Cerceline game, he is actually from a village in Aeronoth.
Yeah, he's from Aeronoth, yeah.
And I don't think we've said that in Cerceline. Like, we haven't said, oh, my village in Aeronoth, but we did name that village, and I think you can now get the Aeronoth map, you know, and it's really, so that absolutely is the case. But I like what you said, Matt. I like the idea that they're all little nods and little things here and there, maybe, but not like these two worlds are colliding. And one thing though is that I think it's cool to think that the Copper Jackals are somehow everywhere.
Yeah,
I just love that idea that somehow this freaking society, this organization, is like the Shield. They're like the agents of Shield, where they can be wherever, whenever. They just know what's up.
Yeah, I like that too. And I mean, there's a Copper Jackals chapter called the Bleak Treaders. They're literally guys that are good at navigating the Bleak, and so it's feasible that they would cross the Bleak and get into other worlds. And I'm sure that that's part of what's happening in Aeronoth, where somehow Dice has been contacted by the Jackals in Aeronoth, so it's definitely possible. Okay, more questions.
I saw one up a little bit ago, and I think it got buried. But they said, how do you guys handle retconning in your campaign? I happened to see it, but they said, how do you handle retconning in your campaign? Because that's something that I have trouble with.
Yeah.
So, Matt, can I throw that to you? How do you handle retconning?
Yeah, so, I mean, and for those of you who are unaware, retconning is where you establish something, and then later on you go back and change what you've established or negate what you've established. And I think that people get really hung up on wanting things to be cohesive and consistent and make sense across the board, but, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a fan of, I need this to work now for me right now in this present. And of course I'm going to give what I've said before consideration, and I'm going to try and make things as cohesive as possible. But, these are 17 sessions, 3 to 4 hours apiece. There's no way I'm going to remember exactly what I said or what anyone else said in every minute of those games. And even going back to, like, the Sundered Throne campaign, in the Sundered Throne, the thing, like, Krieg and Torlin and Karn, like, they were all, like, lordships in the same country, but then moving forward I decided that they were all their own kingdoms in the north. And it's like, that's a really simple retcon, and it doesn't break anything. It doesn't break the world. It still holds up, under scrutiny. So I would say that, don't be afraid to retcon if it helps the story. Don't be afraid to go back and change something if it makes it easier and makes it work better right now. Because most of the time, no one's going to notice. You might have someone in the chat that's like, hey, now you said that the sword was green and now it's blue. What? And I'm just going to be like, dude, I can't help it. I can't help it.
I'm feeling blue today.
All right, cool. Let's see here. Here we go. This is another question for Barker here. Grimsvald Brender. That's an awesome name. His question for you, Barker, is any idea what Copper Jackal boons will be in Dice's future? And do you think the copper will work alongside your liquid silver from sessions 16 to 17, or will the copper replace it?
So, I've thought about that, and I think it's time for Dice to have a new staff. and I think his staff would be the Miserium, that metal, and I think his jackal bite would be his mask. That's like, coming down his neck a little bit. I've not thought about boons, but I feel like every once in a while I think like maybe I'll change Dice's spells to do this. I'll change him to acid or something like that instead of ice. But I always feel like I'm being disloyal to him. Like whenever I think about it, I decide against it immediately. Like, no, dude, if I took away freeze the meat from Dice, even as a copper jackal, there would be something that would just not make sense about him to me. So probably ice, cold. I like the idea of him being able to control the weather. Maybe that would be cool. We'll see. I'll see. I don't know.
All right, cool.
That's the truth.
That's not a funny thing, though.
It's getting me. Something in the chat. Don't worry about it. Okay, here's a question from Dickley Quill. What are your opinions on dual GMing? So I assume that they're talking about having multiple game masters in the same campaign. I've done this before, but I'll toss it to you guys here. I don't know if you guys have ever had experience about this, or if you have an opinion on it. If you would be comfortable having another game master, run a stretch of a campaign or something in your world.
I think that I could see it working. I don't have any desire to try it myself, really. One thing that I've seen is that I think could work, especially if you have a really big group, is kind of assigning a player to keep track of stats and stuff like that for the DM, kind of an assistant DM. And yeah, I think that could work well. But yeah, I don't have any real desire to try it.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I have a video, like an old video. It's like one of my first videos where I talk about giving your players jobs. Like, hey, your job is to keep track of initiative. Your job is to keep track of spell durations. You're going to be my mapper guy if we have the mat out in the middle of the table. Like, you're going to be in charge of choosing the music that we listen to while we're playing, that sort of thing. Like offloading those kind of jobs can be really, really helpful. So I think it could work online too if we designated hey, every session you're going to be in charge of this, or you're going to take notes this session, or whatever. I think that's great advice.
And with James and I being two people who run the same channel, we talked about doing this from the beginning. Our shtick was going to be whenever we run a game, we do it together. But the more we talked about it and actually kind of ran through some concepts, the first thing is the game master and the players should have more of an equal level of storytelling anyway. So everyone should kind of be game mastering a little bit with one person who's in the lead and steering the ship. I feel like so if you're playing the kind of game that I like, everyone kind of is game mastering a little bit, but one person adjudicates what flies. But I also am a fan of music, and I love albums, and when a band records an album, it has a certain feel and a tone, and the amps they used and the mics and the engineer and the staff, and it's a stamp in time. And I love that. So I like the idea of one game master who's kind of the producer of the thing, so it keeps the same vibe throughout. Because why are you going to have two game masters anyway? In other words, the assistant game master, I love that idea. And Matt, the job, doling out the jobs, that keeps everyone involved. But actually giving it to another person to steer, we decided not to do that because James wants to see where Tim's going to take it, and then when it's my turn to be the player, I want to see where James is going to take it. So that's my thought on it.
So I do this thing sometimes when I'm running a game where I will throw something to the players and be like, hey, describe to me what this thing looks like. And they'll, or oh, we go into this room. Okay, tell me what you find. Well, what do you mean tell me what you tell me what I find? No, 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 no. You, the player, tell me what you find in the room. And I do that as an exercise because I have enough trouble as it is sharing information distribution with the players. I can't even imagine having to share with another GM. I'm such a control freak, and I'm in music too, like Tim. I can't be in a band. I get so mad at people for not playing the exact thing I want them to play. So I hate that idea, but I'm envious of people who can do it. So it's not for me yet, but I've never really seen it done though. So I guess maybe it's just the best thing ever, or maybe there's been some rotating GMs. Or not rotating GMs, but simultaneous GMs. Rotating is a completely different thing, which could be cool. Maybe there's some simultaneous GMs out there that just run the best sessions ever.
Like, I always wonder how the Wachowski brothers do it. Or, like, these people is, like, directed by this person and this person. I'm like, I don't know, who makes the call? And I feel
like one Wachowski brother wrote The Matrix, and he's like, hey, bro, read this. And he's like, oh, that's great. And they released it. And he's like, hey, let's do the second and third one together. And it was just a jumbled mess. Both of them.
Yeah. So, I don't know. And it could work, but I just feel like I'm with you, Barks.
So, here's what I want to do, guys. We're at 2 hours right now. We're going to keep going for a little bit, but I don't want to go for a super long time just because, people have work in the morning and stuff. But what I'd like for us to do is let's go through the remaining questions and each pick one that we want to answer. And then I want to talk really briefly about Campaign 2 and just kind of do a little bit of just kind of riffing back and forth on some thoughts about Campaign 2 and what we want to do with that. So, so find a question that you want to answer. It could be one for a specific person or one for all of us to chime in about, and we'll go ahead and answer those. And if we did not get to your question today, I'm really sorry. We answered a ton, though. We are getting through these questions. We actually almost got to the bottom of the list here. So, yeah. Looks like, Tim, you have a question you want to answer, so I'm going to toss it over to you, buddy.
All right. So, Warmaker777, he says, I've been trying to convince a friend of mine to start playing D&D, but he's hesitant to do so because he doesn't get how it could be more fun than video games. How would you convince someone to try? I'm a person who likes to see it in action, so maybe show him a video of some people having fun playing D&D. The Provokers is a great example. There are a lot of really good actual plays out there. But I'm going to give you a piece of advice that isn't probably going to be what you want to hear either, and it's that if it takes an awful lot of convincing, I wouldn't. Because there are a ton of people who are wanting to play, like in the Tabletop RPG One-Shot group, the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group, and what I learned playing in the Provokers on accident was I was playing with the wrong people for a lot of years, and that made me think the game was a certain way. So find people who want to play, and your game's going to be way better. Don't give up on your friend and show him that, and if he thinks it's cool, awesome. But it's usually not worth the effort trying to make someone like tabletop RPGs, and you'll end up having a game that you probably don't enjoy as much.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think, showing someone a game going well. And also, I think, asking them or explaining to them that, video games are limiting. They're limited by the code, and role-playing games aren't. They have no limit. So, I might say, hey, give me one session, bro. Give me one session to show you what this is about. And if you don't like it, we won't play anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Barker, you said you had a question that you'd like to answer?
Yeah, it's actually about the next campaign, Campaign 2. This is from Christy Smith. Have any of you thought about what your characters will be in the next campaign? And the reason I picked this one is because we had a conversation a little while back where I brought up the idea of maybe playing as Holly 20 years later in the future and just being like a freaking crossbow gunslinger, just blasting people, you know, looking for her dad or not, you know, whatever. And it actually came down to a coin flip, because it was like, am I going to play Holly and control this, or am I going to give Holly to Matt forever and let Matt do whatever he wanted with that character or that plot line? And the coin landed on me not playing Holly. So I am going to play in my mind, this is subject to change. I want to play someone similar to that, just like a gunslinger with crossbows, blasting bolts, and talking smack, and being someone probably a little more confident than Dice, maybe off the cuff. That is all subject to change, but I like the idea of playing someone kind of like a more, we'll say, confident version of Randall the Woodsman from the Winds of Cersaline game. I think that would be fun.
Awesome, man. Yeah, and I love that the Holly thing came down to a coin flip, and I can say that, like, Holly is going to be in Campaign 2. She will be a non-player character in Campaign 2, and she'll be a fairly prominent character, I think, if I end up going in the direction that I want to go. And that's a question that I think that we could toss to Nate and Tim as well, is like, what are you thinking about character for Campaign 2? Do you have any ideas whatsoever? Anything that you've wanted to play that you haven't been able to play yet? Even the barest inkling of what you might want to do?
I am so indecisive when it comes to this stuff. Like, yeah, for Tim's Dragon Grin Campaign 2, I still haven't really nailed something down very firmly. I've got a better idea just in the last, like, 2 days, just because everyone else is coming up with stuff, and I'm like, oh, I gotta come up with something, right? But, man, I don't know. I want to play something different, you know, something pretty different. So, you know, maybe that's in the class in terms of maybe it's a magic user, or maybe it's in the just definitely going to be something different in temperament, and yeah, I don't know.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I like that. I like that everyone will be playing something, you know, fairly different from what they've done in the first Provokers campaign. So, what about you, Tim?
I've decided for sure that I'm going to play a druid, which is the only time I've ever even considered playing a druid. I played a druid during Barker's live stream when we came out with Be a Better Campaign Master, and we had that awesome, you know, we built the world and then played the quick, like 20 minutes on the ship. So I was like a level 1 and barely a druid, but I've never gravitated towards druids, and I don't know why. It's not that I dislike them. I just they've never clicked with me. So I'm going to take that concept and work it into the character somehow. And I haven't figured out how, but in the same way that Barker kind of channeled himself into Dice, I'm going to channel myself into this druid in a way. And I don't know how that's going to take shape, or what race, or even what gender, you know, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Awesome, man. I love that idea. That'll be really cool. All right, Nate, you said you had a question you want to answer here as well.
Sure. I've been pretty out of the chat, so sorry everybody if you've been talking to me in the chat and I don't know. But this one sparked my interest. Do you feel, this is from Lumi Joe, sorry. Do you feel you do as much actual dungeon crawling as you'd like? Or is it not usually what you want to focus on? So this campaign has showed me that, like, you can have an awesome session that's all role play, and I never thought that would be possible. But those were the moments of this campaign. I mean, the combat was awesome too. Don't get me wrong, but man, there were some just really powerful. I mean, it's just getting around and telling a story together. But the thing I'll say is that I do like a classic dungeon here and there. And I think Matt did that very well here and there. Just like, this is the troll tunnels. This is, whatever it might be. But obviously, I think that a dungeon can be, yeah, like I'm thinking about this now as I'm planning a campaign. You know, what can my next dungeon be? It's not going to be a dungeon, right? It's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be an old warehouse. It's going to be whatever it is, right?
Yeah, well, and I think that, a dungeon, like you're saying, Nate, like it's not necessarily a dungeon. Like if you look at a session in the Provokers, like the session when you guys were going to see the troll, that was effectively a dungeon crawl, even though you were outside in the middle of the woods. But it was like, go here. Like there were some hazards, there were some social encounters, there were some combat encounters, and effectively it played out like a dungeon crawl with these sort of different encounters happening. And so, like, don't be afraid to take like the idea of a dungeon. I think it was who said this? I think it was John Allen Large was talking about a dungeon without a ceiling. It's like you can make a dungeon without a ceiling. Anything can be a dungeon. It could be a mass combat. It could be a role play encounter where you're at a masquerade ball. Like, take the idea of a dungeon, which is fairly simple to pull off, and use it in a completely different situation scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dungeon provides a structure that you can use in any place or in any type of interaction.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, the structure. It's like a skeleton framework that you could just kind of hang cool stuff on and make happen.
Yeah.
Like also consider that dungeon, by its true definition, is not what we're talking about. Like, we're not talking about medieval prisons. Like, so this, dungeon, we're already talking about something completely different. Dungeon means kind of underground labyrinth, right? It just kind of sounds cool, so that's what we're talking about. But exactly like Matt and Nate said, a dungeon can mean anything. You can have a dungeon in a sky, a dungeon on an airship. You can have a dungeon underground, overground, through hedgerows. That's a really cool dungeon to have. Just tons of different things. A battle can be structured in the same way as a dungeon. Like Nate said, it's just the structure of the environment itself and the choices, where the choices that the characters make can lead them. That's the dungeon.
Absolutely. Okay, so before we end for tonight, I want everyone to say one thing that they'd like to see in Campaign 2, or that they think is going to happen in Campaign 2, or just one thought about Campaign 2. And I'll say now that we're going to be taking the summer off from the Provokers. So we're not going to be doing anything with the Provokers, campaign, one-on-one, anything like that until September. We're going to kick it back up in the fall, probably around the 2-year anniversary of this first campaign is when we'll kick the second campaign off. But what I'd like from you guys is just one thing about Campaign 2, and I'll supply something too, but I'm going to start with you guys, and you guys can just jump in whenever you want.
Playing chicken with the mute buttons. Off the top of my head, I would like to see the Provokers still friends. So, like, it's kind of the cool thing to do. It's like, yeah, and then it was fractured and they don't talk, and it's like, that's kind of cool, but I kind of love the idea that whether they were in touch or not, that maybe every once in a while they would still see each other, and that they would still be the Provokers somewhere. So that's what I would like to see. I wouldn't like to see, like, the grizzled, like, and then Durgan and Erdon had a falling out. Like, I kind of want to visit them again in 20 years and it feel like a family reunion.
Yeah, you don't want the VH1 behind the music.
No.
I love the idea that the Provokers might not be together. Like, they might be in, like, different locations doing different things, but they're all like, how is Dice? How is Brasswick? Like, I haven't seen him in a couple years. We were supposed to meet for drinks, but, things got crazy. Like, I love the idea that there's no bad blood there,
Exactly.
Like,
that's what I'd like to see.
That's different from what you would think it would be. Normally you go the opposite, where it's like, oh, and then, like, everyone slept with Erdon's sister and they all hated each other.
Come on now. Low blow.
She's a matron, for God's sake. Come on,
God's
have
sake.
some respect.
Have some respect.
I would like to see. Well, okay, so I drew that Aronoth map, and that just got me really curious when I was drawing that. And I saw some of your, Matt, you gave me some brief, like, one-sentence descriptions, or not even a complete sentence, of these regions, and that just got me super curious. And I just love that throughout the campaign, when we visit a place, we visit a new place, and there's a unique culture and feel to each place, and I just can't wait to see more of those. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm equally as excited to explore more of Aronoth because I've seen so little of it too, so I can't wait to discover more of it with you guys. All right, what about you, Barker?
I am a big fan of the TV shows that cross over, and my favorite part of those is when you watch something and you're like, oh my God, that's from this, oh, that's from that episode, oh, that's so cool. I want to see some of those. I want to see little things from Provokers Campaign 1 in Campaign 2. The little kid with the Tome of Ilmater. All the little pieces, like funerals of characters, I think was mentioned in the chat, that, from Campaign 1 now in Campaign 2. Like, yeah, you just said Caldor. Hell yeah. Like, I want, because the big thing I want is that the reason I love this campaign so much is people were very supportive of Dice, and they really liked Dice, and that helped me to roleplay him and really get him out. So the thing I really want is you guys, if you're watching this right now, like, continue the support, because you have no idea what it meant to me personally, and I know I speak for everybody. So it'd be cool to have that for these new characters, and to give the people who do want to watch Campaign 2 a treat by showing them, the people who have watched Campaign 1, little bits of cool stuff that they saw in Campaign 1, but that might not have been, a big thing. I think that'd be cool.
Dude, yeah, Caldor is someone who I would like to see what happened to. And I would love it if, not necessarily that he's old and grizzled, but it would be cool to see him grow up a little bit and actually maybe be partially that adventurer who he was saying he was in that first session. And maybe even he did really face a red dragon and he hated it and he never wants to do it again, and he'll never be a braggart because he's seen it, or I don't know, just that kind of growth I think would be cool.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Tim, because I had it in my head that you guys were gonna see Caldor again at some point. Like you were gonna roll into a town that was like under siege by the Corruptor's army, and there was Caldor, and he had risen to the occasion, and he was leading these people against the Corruptor, and he had learned his lesson and become a better person. And I just could never find the right time to like kind of shoehorn him in. And I think if we would have had like one or two more sessions, I would have found a way to have him be in there. But it just never felt right to be like, oh, when you come around the corner and there's an orc and you recognize him right away, it's Caldor. But I had big plans, man, from like that first session. I was like, I can't wait for them to see Caldor again.
Dude, and imagine, that would be so cool if now he's gray, his hair is still long, he's still sort of striking.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, that would be such a cool, like, yeah. You don't even have to name him. People would know.
People would know who it is. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I would say for me, mine's a little bit specific. But one thing that I really like the idea of is looking at the people of Gevalt and thinking about like what was that like for them? What is it like for them now? Because essentially they've been sort of forcefully subjugated, united under this banner of this corruptor, and obviously some of them have gone willingly. But the idea that they march away from their home, burning as they go, they get to Falhast, they get to this place that they're supposed to go to, they've been made promises by this corruptor, and then the corruptor says, don't need you anymore, peace, flies away. and then they get defeated, sandwiched between two armies. What happens to the people of Gavalt? And that's a question that I'm going to answer in campaign 2, is thinking about the survivors from Gavalt and their descendants who have had to deal with these war reparations, basically having to serve and repay the damage that had been done to the Western Southlands. What is it like for a person of Gavalt? And I think that seeing some sympathetic NPCs from Gavalt, potentially having a player play someone who's descended from someone from Gavalt, I think would be really cool and give us kind of a deeper look at, like, hey, it's not victorious for everybody. This wasn't a victory for everyone. Like there's it was not good for the people of Gavalt what happened. So I'm definitely going to be exploring that quite a bit in campaign 2, I think. So yeah.
I think that's cool. I like the idea. They reminded me of like the Dunlendings from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
That we didn't get to see very much in the films, but like that's kind of a people that's really persuaded, convinced to join this conflict that
exactly.
Ends
Yeah, exactly. And it's like we'll learn a bit more about like why the Corruptor needed the people of Gavalt, because I've seen a couple people say like why did the Corruptor not just get on his griffin and fly to the pyramid and do the thing once he got the sword? And it's like, well, there are some reasons why he didn't just do that, and we'll learn about them in campaign 2 and learn more about the role that the people of Gavalt played in his plan in what he was doing. So I think that'll be pretty cool. All right, so I think we're going to wrap it up here, guys. We've been going for about 2.5 hours now. We got awesome questions. We had over 50 people watching the entire time, which is just awesome. This isn't even a session. We had 50 people hanging out with us and asking questions and talking about the campaign. I've said this time and time again, but this is, best campaign I've ever been involved with, best players I've ever had the pleasure of playing with, and these guys are some of my best friends, and I can't wait for what the future holds in this campaign and many campaigns and many endeavors to come. Thank you again for all tuning in. I'm going to toss it over to these guys to close it out. We'll go ahead and start with Barker.
Thank you, everybody. I've been thanking you for many, many sessions, and now here. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for being supportive, and thanks for being fun in the chat, and thanks for liking my character. I don't know, I sound kind of like a cheese ball saying that, but thanks for liking Dice, because I like Dice a lot, and Dice means a lot to me. So, there's only one character sheet on my wall, and the one thing I do want to kind of give a shout out to is that Matt and I do a podcast called Roll Up and Die. And Tim and Nate both have been on it, so you can check it out at facebook.com/rollupanddie or on Podbean or on iTunes. Check it out. We're actually coming up on episode 50, and it's my turn to run a game, so I'm going to be running Microscope, which is like a world-building fractal RPG. It's weird, hard to explain, but we're actually going to be giving away a couple PDF copies of this in a contest. So, yeah, check out Roll Up and Die. But yeah, seriously, thank you all very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm so excited for episode 50 of Roll Up and Die. I'm really, really interested in checking out that game, Barker. And I think we should also play it when you guys are here in July and maybe film that as well. I think that would be really cool.
Absolutely. I have to run Dread. Dread.
You have to run Dread because we didn't play Dread last summer, and instead we just we just sat around and talked for 4 hours and ate
swam in a lake.
Yeah.
That is very kind. We didn't play Dread because my 4-hour one-shot was 19 hours.
Give or take a couple.
It was 7 nautical hours and 3 astronaut days.
By the end of the night, I was seeing the blood in my vision. That was in my bloodshot eyes. I could see the redness. It was like I had 3D glasses on.
Oh, awesome. All right, Nate, close this out, man.
Yeah, so Nate, WASD20. Man, this has been amazing. Thank you, everyone, so much for hanging out with us for all the sessions. And, yeah, for being here tonight. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, these guys, I'm so excited that, what a crazy thing that this all worked out. And I'm so excited we get to keep playing together. So, yeah, it's going to be awesome.
I agree with your sentiments completely, Nate. All right, Tim.
I'm Tim with Tabletop Terrors, and I'm going to plug the Dragon Grin game that's coming up on the 18th. We've decided that it's going to be 8:30 Eastern, and it is going to be the game that I feel like I've wanted to run for a long time, and it will be the first campaign. James ran a mini campaign, but this is going to be the first ongoing campaign in our world of Dragon Grin, where the Dark Lord, the Dismembered Lord, has won, and the forces of evil have been vanquished. No, forces of good have been vanquished. And so I'm excited to run that game. If you want to be in games like that, or other games, don't forget to join the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/Absolute Tabletop. Me, James, Barker, Matt, Nate, we all hang out in there and just kind of talk. So come on and join.
Absolutely.
And
I
gotta
am Matt.
tune in to that Dragon Grin game. You gotta tune in.
Tune into the Dragon Grin game. It's going to be so fun. We're all going to be there. Plus James, plus Cassie. It's going to be nuts. You don't even know. I don't know what's going to happen. None of us know. Tim doesn't even know. It's going to be great. All right. I am Matt. I have been your dungeon master for this campaign. And, yeah, I've already said everything I need to say. Best campaign ever, best players ever. I love these guys, and I can't wait to play with them again. Check out the different stuff we have going on this summer. Check out Nate, sellswordmaps.com. Check out what he's got going on over there. Check out Absolute Tabletop, Roll Up and Die. And get out there and game, man. Absolute Tabletop group, Tabletop RPG one-shot group. Get out there and run some games and play some games of your own. So, all right, everyone. We love you all. We will see you again very, very soon. And as always, may your pizzas be hot and ready.